Hello there. So in this presentation, I'm going to be talking about the IB Diploma's English A Language and Literature Paper 1. So it's going to be mainly for higher level students, but the same applies, similar rules apply to standard level, and this also fits with the literature course that some of you may be doing. So let's crack on, let's go through a sample paper, and I'm going to use a structure called the Big Five. This is one of the strategies you can use to answer this question. So firstly, we have the mark scheme. This is the new mark scheme for the course that started in 2019. So here we're looking at 4 criteria. The first one is about the general meaning and understanding that you may have from the text and any larger implications. The second one is more zoomed in, looking at specific examples and context of composition from the author. Third one is the organisation of your essay, how focused it is, how clear it is. And the last one, language, is generally how polished, how effective, and how formal is your register when you're writing. Okay, so let's have a look at a text. You can pause the video here if you'd like to read through it in detail. The second section. And the last one. And then at the end you have some sources. Always think it's good to look at the sources before you start writing. They could very often give you a clue. This one actually directly gives you the text type. It's a personal journal or diary from this particular author, The Journal of a Disappointed Man. The title is a little strange given the text itself is quite upbeat and optimistic, so you may want to bear that in mind as you're talking. What is he disappointed about? And 1919, obviously, we know from the context of this, it comes just after the end of the Great War. So you would imagine a time of kind of optimism in the West. So let's have a look through the various options here. Sorry, the second text here as well for higher level. The second text here is a movie poster, as you can see. I should say one difference with the new course is that you don't have to compare the two texts. You do answer about 2 different texts, paper 1, but you don't have to compare them. Okay, so I'm going to use the Big Five structure and make comments on each of these, and you'll see after each comment EV means evidence, so from the text to how I would justify or support what I'm saying. I have to do that all the time in criterion A to score well. Okay, so audience and purpose of the first text. We know probably fairly educated readers from the World War I era. The context here, I guess an appreciation of nature during a time of war or a time that's just finished. There's been a lot of destruction, and there are some allusions to war as we go through. The self-sacrifice, joining the army, I guess, and maybe sacrificing yourself would be a reference there. There's also some assumed knowledge about the audience and what they would know. There's a quote there from Shakespeare, and also some work from Jonathan Swift. It assumes that the audience will pick up on that and be aware of it. The second text, the movie poster, we know that we've got a timestamp, it's 1957, so we know it's 1950s. People who are interested in going to the movie, the purpose is obviously to persuade you to go to a movie. Fans of science fiction, it's reasonable to assume that. The context, again here, look at the context. What else do you know about that time period? This time World War II had just finished, 12 years after, or 12 years previously. So it's in the post-war era, maybe the Cold War was happening here. It's a certain amount of paranoia about what's happening. Also, it's the start of the space race between the US and Russia, and there's evidence of this kind of paranoia would be the victim of weird mist, and obviously science fiction in general ties in with exploration of the unknown. So there's some audience and purpose there to have a look at. Now the content and theme. Content is a good thing that's often overlooked. It's your chance to just summarise in a simple way what is actually happening in the text. What is it about? So show you get the basic meaning by talking about content. In the first one, it's a man spending time with his girlfriend, surrounded by nature. It's told through an unusual perspective, though, with the point of view here. He appears, he's lying on the grass, and so he appears shrunken and kind of was consumed by nature, is overwhelmed by it. Evidence of that, a chicken came our way and he seemed an enormous bird. Okay, there's lots of other examples you can use here. I'm just picking up one at a time. The second one, again, the story here, it's the poster itself is kind of in a narrative form, tells the story of a man who shrinks and then faces various dangers from everyday objects and also animals. The theme that would come through there, I guess, is the dangers of science and also post-war paranoia, the idea that everyone's under attack. An alternative theme that would be interesting to look at here is maybe the idea of feminism. The woman does seem stronger in the images here, certainly larger, and so you could look at it through a feminist lens, and there's some evidence there. The first text theme is really, I guess, the appreciation of nature. Okay, the tone and mood in the first one, pick some good adjectives, pick strong adjectives here. Wonder, amazement, things like that. There's a mood of admiration and maybe calm as we listen to this person who's enraptured by nature. Evidence, I never knew before, the delight of offering oneself up, and this kind of self-sacrifice to be at one with nature is a big part of that text. The movie poster is quite different. It's suspenseful. We're not sure what's going to happen. There's a tone of mystery, I guess, around it as well, and certainly a mood of fear and concern about what will happen to the man. If you look at it through a feminist lens, it could be empowering to see men shrink and have all sorts of problems, I guess. And the evidence there, science is baffled, synonyms and the unknown and confusion. So that's the kind of the general tone and mood there you could talk about. Okay, moving on, the next section, you could talk about stylistic features. The important thing here is not to just merely to list, but to focus on explaining the effect they have and trying to link it back really to the overall purpose of the text. So the first one here, a few things to look at. The point of view that it's written in its first person is also restricted, so we only see it from this person's point of view, and they obviously have literally a very restricted view as they're lying in the grass. There are some similes that add a kind of ethereal, religious, spiritual link. It's like a cathedral, and certainly towards the end there's some religious vocabulary. There are some allusions to Gulliver's Travels. They add to the kind of shrunken feel, but also in Gulliver's Travels he does also become a giant, or he's in a land of small people. So you get the feeling of him being a giant, as in like the classic Lilliput, and also the sense that he's also shrunken and maybe somewhat insignificant when compared with nature. There's a semantic field of energy when he describes the beech tree, and that helps us share that buzz, the idea of the tiger and tingling, vitalizing, all those words kind of connected with energy and power, I guess. And then the stylistic features of the movie poster, that can appear quite tricky because there isn't a huge amount of language here to work on, so you have to look very carefully. There's a lot of emotive adjectives. It's designed to grab your attention very quickly, so it uses superlatives like the most incredible. It uses strong adjectives like terror to immediately grab the reader, and probably more language than a typical movie poster today. Punctuation, also 7 exclamation marks throughout the whole text, so it's very hyperbolic tone and hyperbolic use of stylistic features. The ellipsis that goes on builds the suspense. We're waiting to see what happens. The ellipsis makes us pause and wait. And also very, very short captions that illustrate what's going to happen in the movie, like a snapshot of the movie. The structure itself, you can finish with the structure for the big 5. 2 things you want to look at: the tropes of the text type, what are they typical, and also the development of the text itself. It's a good thing to talk about. So here, the tropes of a journal, yes, it's got a date, it's got a first-person address, it follows most of the rules of a journal. In terms of how it develops, it's mostly chronological. It talks about a day going in through the woods and the forest, and it ends with a slightly more personal focus, religious connotations and the idea of marriage possibly, so it brings it back to the 2 characters in the journal. The movie itself, in terms of the structure, it has a kind of cartoon comic style. Obviously computer graphics weren't invented then. It doesn't use photography either. It uses these illustrations. The poster has a kind of comic style, these narrative boxes, these frames that it uses, and also the structure of the text gets smaller and smaller, which obviously reflects the idea of the plot of the movie as well. In the bottom left, the woman is taller than the man. That's very unusual even today. When you look at magazine covers and movie and posters, the man is nearly always taller in those images than the woman. So it's interesting, if we look at it through a feminist lens, how that appears net to us there. And lastly, there are two rows of images that tell the story. They kind of create tension and interest, hopefully. And then there's a call to action. It's really a persuasive text. So there's a call to action at the end where you can find out the name of the movie, find out the famous people in it. Presumably Grant Williams and Randy Stewart are the most famous because they've got a larger font than the other people who were mentioned. So there we go. So there's a few quick things to run through there, an example of how you could use the Big Five to answer those two texts. I hope that helps.